This is Tom for TuneProducer.com, your connection for inside information about the music entertainment business. Today I'm talking with Andy Aledort. Andy is a powerhouse guitar playing, singing musician that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. Andy has intrigued me from the first time that I had the pleasure of hearing him in the Groove Kings, that's his band, at a local venue, the Viking in Islip, New York. I've followed him regularly since then, and I've always been surprised at the new set of tricks I get to hear every time I go to see him. Thanks again for having a sit down with us, Andy.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So it's nice of you to sit down and talk with us.
It's that free sandwich you promised me.
It is. And the milk and cookies.
That isn't coming. I hate to break it to you.
So where'd you grow up?
Right by the Nassau border, Great Neck. And, you know, part of growing up in Queens was as soon as we possibly could, way before we wanted our parents to know, we were jumping on the bus and subway to go to Manhattan. So I remember being 12 and sneaking into the city. Like, hey man, let's go to 8th Street, you know. And was it Nedick's on the corner? Do you remember? Was Nedick's on the corner or Nathan's? Not Nathan's. I think it was Nedick's. It's on the corner of 6th Avenue and 8th Street. Well, anyhow, it was like very exciting, like crazy, like scary and exciting. Look at the hippies and the head shops, and you know, I mean, that was like where it was happening. Well, I remember Trudy Heller's was right there too. It was like a block up, maybe on 9th Street.
9th Street,
yeah. And so, you know, that was the beginning of the, hey man, you know, go west, young man. You
and
know?
right up behind you was Electric Lady.
Well, I remember when Electric Lady opened and we went because we had to see it, you know. And of course, Jimmy died so quickly after that. And since we're talking about it, I'll never forget hearing it. You know, I was eating dinner with my folks. And we would always, my mom would put like WPAT on or something, you know, classical music. My mom is a musician. I might as well get this in there. She was a singer and a piano player. And so I grew up with that, a lot of music in the house. And anyhow, they said guitarist Jimi Hendrix died today. I'll never forget that. And he was already by that point my favorite musician of all, and it was you know, an unforgettable thing. And definitely, you know, he was so inspirational and ultimately my main inspiration for playing. But that didn't come till a couple of years later.
How did Jimmy affect your playing?
I mean, he affected every single thing there is about my playing, but he also affected me like the way any great art affects you, you know. It will permeate everything about the way you think about creativity, because he was so creative, it was nuts. And I mean, you know, I was born in 1956. I was 7 years old, about to turn 8 when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan. And for people of our generation, you know, that was a watershed moment, a huge moment. Beatles on Ed Sullivan was like a space invasion or something.
Yeah.
You know, this four-headed beast showed up, completely blew everyone's mind and changed everything. And so I became a Beatles fanatic, along with every single person I knew. And
sitting there waiting for each new album to come
oh
out.
God, go to Corvettes.
Exactly.
219 when it was on sale.
Yeah.
EJ Corvettes. And you know, learning every song and buying singles and going to the movies, you know, Hard Day's Night and Help. And so by the time Hendrix came along in 1967, you know, was completely infatuated with pop music, and the Beatles were probably my favorite. But before Hendrix, I think, this weight is in my memory, I heard Cream, and like most people, I think, the first thing I probably heard from Cream was Sunshine of Your Love or Strange Brew from Disraeli Gears, and just was completely in love with it right away. And then I think again, this is the way it is in my memory. So I discovered Fresh Cream afterwards from hearing Disraeli Gears, and uh, and then Wheels of Fire. Forget about it. So like at that age, it's always sort of in my mind. It's always the summer times, but in the summers, summer of '68, summer of '69, like you just were so aware of the records that came out, and so like in um, '69. I mean, 68, 69, I'm going to lump them together, but you had the Beatles' White Album, you had Wheels of Fire from Cream, and then Electric Ladyland came out. And Electric Ladyland is what sort of, it was a shift for me. Um, it was actually a really specific moment. I went to summer camp, and I was alone in the bunk, and somebody had a record player, and that record, and the Gypsy Eyes, the song Gypsy Eyes came on. And I just ended up putting it back and listening to Gypsy Eyes like, I don't know, a dozen times in a row. And astral projected, like left the planet. And it was like being a different person after that. Like, 'cause listening to Hendrix and the impact that that particular song had on me was that I just didn't know that music could make you feel like that. I loved music, but this was something else. This was like sort of this feeling of the infinite, or something that the creativity. There's just something in that song. Still to this day, it's so um, evocative and mysterious, and I don't know. There's so much in it.
So much creativity.
So much creativity and
like
feeling. Yeah.
He was like a loose cannon creatively.
Yeah, but it was so structured. Like everything, it was so perfect. So how do you? It's like perfect chaos. Well, that is, the definition of a lot of great art is where you can evoke the impression of chaos, and it's the furthest thing from chaos because it's contained in a composition, and that could be a visual composition, or in terms of a record, it's an audio composition. Finding something new, breaking from tradition, something that was daring, nothing is sacred, blowing everything up, Um, Hendrix was pretty good at that.
Oh yeah.
But it had been, he was following. He wasn't just an innovator, progenitor of all of these things. He had been influenced himself by the Beatles and by Bob Dylan.
Sure.
So when I was like the year before our experience came out in '66, I'm 10 years old, and my sister, I mean, I'll never forget this either. She came home with Blonde on Blonde, Bob Dylan. And so to this day, maybe my favorite song ever is Stuck Inside of Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Like, it's just, I can't even describe why that song is so perfect for me. It goes on and on and on and on. There's so many verses. It's just forget it.
As Bob Dylan was apt to write.
Yeah, yeah. And along those lines was Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, which was, double albums was a new concept in 1966. And then for a song to be the whole side of an album was completely nuts.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of pressure, not that I knew this, without knowing why, I knew there weren't songs that lasted the side of an album.
Well, Airplay was 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah, but I didn't know that when I was 10.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But I had been programmed myself by AM radio. Exactly. Like, this is how music is. It's 2.5 minutes long. Songs are 2.5 minutes long. Maybe 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Maybe. It's a long one, like American Woman. So listening to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands and being given this example that a piece of music, it doesn't have to end after 3 minutes. It doesn't have, and then that opens the door to, there's a lot of things it doesn't have to do.
Exactly.
Or be.
But the jazz format had broken through that long before
Right.
the rock format did,
Right.
rock and blues. And I think that when you're talking about Hendrix and his live performances, he really was just wild. I remember him when he first
Well, this is
came
where I
back.
should interview you. Like the fact that you got to be with Jimmy, the man, at the Cafe Wah in 1966. I mean, that's just completely insane to me.
I know.
You should be sitting next to Hendrix right now. Why
Yeah,
would you sit? Why would you want to sit next to me?
Because you're a very important force in music on Long Island, especially, and you continue to amaze me when I go to listen to you.
Oh well.
You've got a great story about Mitch Mitchell.
Oh, tons.
Yeah, and Jimitators.
The Jimmy Taters. Well, to explain this whole thing, and it goes back to my reissued album, Put a Sock in It. This album is from 1999, and it has just been reissued on Long Song Records in Italy, remastered. It sounds really fantastic, and I'm so happy that my friend Fabrizio Personoto from Long Song contacted me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I love your record. What's going on with it? Let's reissue it and remaster it." And I said, "That's a good idea." So it's lovely gatefold, new pictures that have never been seen before by the incredible photographer Danny Clinch. And so I had interviewed Steve Ray Vaughan a bunch of times, starting in 1986. And the first time I got together with him, the first thing we did was play together. I brought a guitar and an amp. It was December 2nd, 1986, Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie. I brought a guitar and amp, as I always did, to interviews. And in '86, I was relatively new to guitar magazines. I had become the editor-in-chief of Guitar for the Practicing Musician at the end of 1984, very beginning of 1985. So I was like a year, close to 2 years into it. And they sent me to this interview lesson. So I'd always bring a guitar and an amp. Steve Morris and Rush and Brian Setzer and just it was me showing up usually with this guitar. And so I showed up to do this interview lesson thing with Stevie, put the amp down, we're in the dressing room before the show, plug his guitar, and he's got number one, his beat up famous guitar. I have this guitar, my beat up, not so famous guitar. And I plug in and we tune up and then we just start to play. So we played this shuffle, like an E shuffle, for like 10 minutes. And so then we finish and I take the guitar off and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Well, I have to interview you." He goes, "Oh, I thought we were just going to have fun."
Good
and
start.
Stevie was really something else, man. So anyway, I just wrote a biography of Stevie Ray Vaughan for St. Martin's Press. And this picture of me and Stevie together in here, and pictures of Stevie that I took. But so I ended up interviewing him a lot of times over the years and getting to know him. He's a wonderful guy, and Jimmy Vaughan too. Okay, fast forward because we're going to get up to Mitch Mitchell. So Stevie dies, and it's the most horrible thing ever. And I end up doing interviews with Chris Layton and Tommy Shannon from Double Trouble, his band, and with Reese Wine as the keyboard player. Chris Layton's the drummer, Tommy Shannon's the bass player. And of course, Chris and Tommy formed the band Archangels with Doyle Bramhall too and Charlie Sexton. And so I interviewed them for that project, and they formed Storyville. And so anyway, this relationship is solidifying over time, where I'm talking to Chris and Tommy, and when I was recording Put a Sock in It, I started to send them tracks, and they really loved the tracks. And so they asked me, they were both coming up to New York to shoot instructional videos for Hot Licks. They asked me what if I would play on their instructional videos with them.
Cool is that?
And I was freaking out, I mean, this was Chris and Tommy, this is Double Trouble, like I couldn't believe it. And so those things exist. If you watch Chris Layton's drum video for Hot Licks or Tommy's bass video, there's me in the video playing with those guys. And it was right from around then, from '99. And that just led to all these other things of them asking me, hey man, like, why you want to do this and come play with us? And I was like, yes, I do. So one of those things, they were asked to put a band together to play. The Jimi Hendrix estate put out a box set that many people are familiar with, this purple box set, 4 CDs. It's just called the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Mm-hmm. And it was released in 2000. So to celebrate the release of this box set, they did this big exhibition at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And they had a lot of bands, and they had this big Hendrix exhibition. Jimi Hendrix's father, Al Hendrix, was there, so I got to meet Al. And there were different artists were playing, but we, like Eric Gales and Vernon Reid and a bunch of other people, but we were the headliners, which was Double Trouble with Malford Milligan singing, who was a singer from Storyville, and me playing guitar, some dude from Queens. And so we're in the dressing room, and me and Tommy Shannon, the bass player, we're just jamming, like messing around. Door opens, Mitch Mitchell and Billy Cox walk in. And I mean, I was like, oh my God, you know. And Billy looks at me and he goes, I heard about you. And he takes Tommy's bass, and me and Billy jam for like an hour and a half. Like on everything. Like whatever we could think of. Mm-hmm. Dolly Dagger, Isabella, Freedom, Easy Rider, Power of Soul, Message of Love. Like it just would never. And Billy, some of them, he would be a little rusty. He'd be like, whoa, hold on, you know. And like on Freedom, I was like, well, we have to do it. The arrangement is the way you guys did it at Isle of Wight, which is not the way it is on the record. There's this whole other piece. And he was like, what's that? And I go, well, it goes to B, and then it goes to E, and then it goes down. And he's like, oh yeah. And Mitch is watching this whole thing. All right, so then we go up to play, and they had a 1968 Plexi, 100-watt Plexi half stack for me. And Tom, I'm not kidding, I just like put everything I can. I'm like, fuck that. And then Tube Screamer was so loud.
You've really never been known to play loud.
I know, it's unusual. But I mean, you know, it sounded sick. The guy whose amp it was like, I didn't know my amp could sound that way. It was like an explosion. It was insane. And the first song we played was Spanish Castle Magic. Like it was so heavy. Mm-hmm. So we played a bunch of songs. We played Manic Depression. We played Angel. Then we did I Don't Live Today, and I sang it. So then I'm playing and singing I Don't Live Today. And Jimi Hendrix's father is right there. And I'm like, this is so insane. And then Mitch and Billy are like over there. I'm like, this is I get chills thinking about it now. It's like, this is so crazy. And the song ends, and then Mitch and Billy walk up on the stage. And Mitch, Chris and Tommy like get up, and Mitch gets me on the drums, and Billy walks over, he's putting on Tommy's bass. He goes, let's play Voodoo Child. Yeah.
Did you know that was going to happen?
Oh, God, no. No, we were asking them, like, are you guys going to play? They're like, well, maybe. We don't know. They were very non-committal. So, of course not. Well, so ultimately that led to me participating for the next, like, 12 years in a lot of Jimi Hendrix tribute shows, which were always with Mitch and Billy and a variety of other really fantastic people. And so I ended up getting to know Mitch and Billy very well. In 2004, I flew to Japan to play the Mount Fuji Rock Festival just with Mitch and Billy as a trio. We did 2 shows. The first one was on the main stage in front of 200,000 people. And
that must have been a little intimidating.
I have to say that it was so unreal to me that I didn't feel intimidated at all somehow, because it was just like I wasn't even on Earth.
Yeah, well, you were a very confident player. I'm sure at that point in time you could handle the material, and you know.
It was more that I just was so, I was bursting. I was so happy. Like, and it was funny. They said, "What do you want to use?" You know, like backline. And I said, "I want 2 full stack 100-watt plexi reissues." And they were like, "Okay, you know, like, whatever." So I walk out, and I have, you know, a couple different fuzz faces. You know, I've never played through 2 full stacks. I played through 1. I had 1, but not 2. And they asked me how to set the knobs, and the Japanese are very meticulous. So I walk up there, and every knob on the amp is exactly the way I wanted it. The volumes were on 8, and it was the loudest thing I ever heard in my whole life. I couldn't even believe it. And my first thought was, this is how Hendrix played every night. Like, this was just on for him. And you get used to it, and after about 30 seconds, you're like, this is good.
Yeah. Do you find it easier to play at that intense volume than it is to play at a lower volume?
No, because it was, I never did it again. Like, I did those shows. I never played through 2 full stacks, almost turned up to 10. I mean, I never did that again. But I was also, it was outdoors in front of 200,000 people, so it could handle it. And I could get away, I didn't have to stand in front of those amps.
Were you playing that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay. And it didn't. Well,
there's a lot of people came up backstage after we played. Mm-hmm. Ben Harper is one of those people. And Ben was flipped out completely. And he was like, oh, let me see your guitar. And so I hand him the guitar. And he's just like going like this and touching it. And, you know, he's like, this is like an ancient artifact or something, you know, like he was really freaked out about the guitar.
And the story behind the guitar is also great because if you notice,
it's Dakota Red in the cavity. Still Dakota Red. Because the idiot who had it before me stripped it. So, well, but if he hadn't stripped it, maybe it wouldn't look like that.
It probably wouldn't have the personality it has in it. Although it would have personality with, you know, large pieces of red missing.
Well, once a red guitar, always a red guitar. So it's a red guitar.
It is.
Ask Mark Knopfler. That's his favorite guitar.
Yeah.
Yes.
He plays it.
Red. His guitar was a red. I think a 61. Also like this. And Roy Gallagher's, I think, is a 61 or a 60. I'm not. No, it has a veneer board. It might be a 62. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a little confused.
Well,
Stevie's was a parts guitar. 62 body, 62 neck. One of the pickups had 59 written on it, so Stevie would call the guitar 59. But it had a veneer board, so it was a 62 neck. So anyway, Mitch was great. It was amazing to get to know Mitch. You mentioned the Jimitators. When we were in Japan, it was like practically an international incident because this guy walks up. We were rehearsing outdoors. They found there was this little area for us to rehearse with a stage. And this guy walks up, Japanese guy. You know, I'm sure he was a very nice guy. Long hair. He was sort of Hendrixed out. He probably had a scarf tied around his knee, you know, things that would make Mitch, you know, make his skin crawl. Yeah. And he came up with his manager, who is also Japanese, who spoke some English. This guy spoke like no English. And he walks up to Mitch. We were on a break. And he goes, I am a Japanese Yimi. And Mitch just went nuts, screaming at the guy.